All right, and now, so I want to welcome our Facebook friends. Boker Tov, Shalom, and we'll make the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, asher kitshanu, v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. I'm going to,
Amen.
thank you. I'm going to go to see if I can find my, uh, I don't have a Jastro with me right this moment, and maybe I should not take the time now. Okay, I found it. So the air. Take a look at that. So Jastro on page 136 translates it as a well or a spring. It also means an origin. So there, it also probably close to the word bore, which means a pit. Okay. So that's kind of the meaning of the word the air. And let me look at and the other word would be ma'ayan.
Or no, you can't use the word ain, which
I think that's a that is a in a construct state, I believe. So I'm going to look up ma'ayan first because it's clearly related to that word. Find the place. Okay. Ma'ayan, spring, fountain, source, issue, a bubbling well. And the again, so he says compare ain, and I can look that up too. So I will look it up. Okay, give me a moment. Um, all right, he does have the word ain here. Let's see, but okay, that is the one meaning. So let me go to the next page. He doesn't. Okay, so you must have it the under the same thing. Let me see. Because normally, if he has more than one meaning, okay, yeah, he does. So let me look up his second meaning. His first meaning, of course, is eye, sight, look. All right, that's number one. But two, oh, anything resembling the eye, a hole, a ring, the opening, etc. Okay, number three is spring or well. So that's how he does it. This is Jastro now, who's looking at it like that. I hope that's helpful.
Well, the question is, why does the Torah use two words for this at this point, pretty
Here,
close together?
I'd have to look at the context, Jocelyn, to be able to answer that question, because if so, if Ain or Ma'ayan has more to do with the water and the source and stuff like that, and that the air has the idea of going down into the well, where you sort of go down to the water itself. And so it might use, and I'm saying might because I don't have the context in front of me, is the idea of Rebecca going down, taking the trouble. A lot of this story that we get into there is about the trouble she takes to take care of Eliezer and the camels and his company, and that she personally goes and takes a lot of trouble to do this, to indicate how hospitable and how concerned she is, not only for the welfare of the people, but also for the welfare of the animals. So the air might be the better word to use there, whereas Mayan might be focusing more on the fact that it's a source of water. So
Is,
that's the best I can do for you at this point.
is it a source of water in addition to it being the source of the people of Israel? Because this is the line.
That's okay. So that is where it's taken on a more metaphoric sense. So my sense is the idea of Ma'ayan or Ain or whatever has more to do with the original meaning of well, etc., and then understood as spring or source, you can then take it on a more metaphoric level. And so they'll the fact that it's poetically appealing to move in that direction, that's why it starts to take on those sorts of meanings.
Okay, well, if you have any further thoughts, let me know.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe if we ever get to that particular section, we'll be able to do that. All right, let's go into here. So we're talking about how Abraham weighs out the money and stuff. Did we read verse 17? Yeah, no, we did not. We did not read verse 17. We finished at verse 17. Vayakom stay Ephron, and the field of Ephron. And really, lakum means it can be to be established, right? That might be the we'd want to go. But Rashi the Midrash does not choose to basically interpret it that way. But it has to do with something like a rising. Asher b'machpelah, which was in the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, Asher lifnei Mamre, which was in Mamre, in the presence of Mamre, but that's not a great translation. Or before Mamre, maybe it was in front of the town, quite possibly. Asadeh, the field, v'hama'ara asher bo, and the cave that was in it, v'chol ha'etz, and all the trees, asher basadeh, which were in the field, asher b'chol gvulo saviv, which were within the entire boundary. So that verse, and this was something that I was taught, as I said, back in rabbinical school, this language sounds like formal language of acquisition, that we were quoting the deed of sale, and the next verse as well. So that this is sort of the formal statement of a legal statement of Abraham acquiring this field. So let's take a look at how Rashi handles this. So he takes Vayakom stay Ephron, and the field of Ephron you'll see, Tkuma Haitalo. It went up. Okay, and we'll see what he means by it going up. Sheyatsa miyad hedyot, because it went from the possession of a commoner, liyad melech, into the possession of a king. So that's the implication he's taking out of the vayakom, that from the word kum, to arise. So the field arose, Ephron's field went to Abraham. However, the simple meaning of the verse, Vayakum hasadeh v'hama'ara, that the field and the cave asher bo, which was in it, the cave that was in it, v'chol ha'etz, etc., the Abraham lemikneh, became Abraham's as a possession. In other words, the title was transferred to Abraham. Excuse me one moment. Thank you. So that's how we understand. So again, sort of understanding that in whose possession was important as far as this was concerned, going from Ephron to Abraham. And I guess there's some thoughts that one might have about, who owns what is also important in terms of the what itself. And again, this is a continuation of the sort of legalese going on. The Avraham lemikna, so to Abraham as a possession, le'enev nechet, in the presence of the children of Chet, b'chol ba'ei sha'iro, and with all who came into the gate of the city. Meaning, I mean, I think that's just an expression meaning that this was a public sale, that there was nothing private about it, in that sense that it was publicly known that Abraham now had possession of this field and the cave. And of course, the fact that it mentions the trees gives it an even greater sort of legalistic kind of thing. Because when you have the land, does that mean you own the trees as well? So it has to be mentioned. Just when you're doing a legal sale, then you have to be very explicit as possible as to what in fact is being sold and what is included in that sale. So that's why I'm thinking that it makes sense to see this as a deed, so that people would not question this particular sale. Here's Rashi, Bechol ba'eshar iro, amongst all those who would enter the city, the karev kulam uva amad. Do I have the right? Is that the right Hebrew here? Oh, but kerev kulam, in the midst of them, uva ma'amad kulam, and so ma'amad would be again a gathering of some official gathering. Iknehu lo, he transferred, he gave him the acquisition. He gave it to him as a possession. So, in other words, I think so. Rashi simply emphasizing the double language here and the implications that this was, everybody knew what happened. This was, as I said, this wasn't done under the table. Let's go on here. Okay. And after this, in other words, once the land became officially Abraham's, Kavar Abraham et Sarah Ishto, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, El Ma'arat Ste HaMachpelah, into the cave of the field of Machpelah, Al Pnei Mamre, in front of Mamre, he Hebron, which is the same as Hebron, the Eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan. A thought involving all of this. I mean, we know that the issue of Israel, of the Israelites going in and conquering and dispossessing the Canaanites, the issue of who owns the land, this land of Israel, the former land of Canaan, to this very day, interestingly enough, is still a source of dispute. And it's amazing how, in a sense, what they're trying to say here is that as far as this was concerned, even though the nature of the ownership might be different from national ownership or on the part of the people, nevertheless, this was free and clear and done legally, and no question about it. So I'm wondering if some of that has in other words, from a literary point of view, whether this has implications on that kind of level. Vayakom hasadeh, and now we have again the sort of repeat of this statement. This the field, Vahamara Asher Bola Abraham, was transferred, if you'll allow me to use that, again coming from this word to establish, La Abraham, to Abraham, La Achuzat Kaver. So Achuzah, of course, it has the understanding of with a holding, as a holding of a grave, in other words, possession. Echoz means to hold on to, hold on to. So it has to do with ownership, right? That this would be his. Me'et, from B'nai Chet, from the children of Chet. So again, sort of, I think there's a lot of circumlocution because of the sensitive nature of what was happening, or the significant nature of what was happening here. Because this, of course, represents the very formal acquisition of land on the part of the Israelites of the land of Canaan. Um, I'm just thinking, parenthetically, I suppose, that you know that the Keren HaYesod, this fund that existed, that the people in terms of the modern state of Israel, a lot of it was purchased from the Turks, so that there was a sense of how, how the ownership would transfer to the Jewish people was done in that way, because at the time, of course, the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, controlled that part of the world. And so I think a lot of land was actually purchased initially. It wasn't just possessed through warfare, but was done in an attempt to do it in a legal way. So we come to the end of one of the main subjects of this parsha, and now we're going to move on to the wonderful story of Eliezer at the well. But before we go there, if anybody wants to make any comments at this point, I'll stop the share briefly and give you that chance to do that. So any thoughts, any reactions, etc., before I move on?
I was just noticing how often the word, like the words le'ene,
Yes.
comes up again and again. Le'ene v'nei ami,
Mhm.
and and also be'ozne v'nei chet.
Yes. Okay, so but Unai is not so repeated, but Ayine I think is, right?
Yeah, it comes up a number of times, and it's I don't know why. I mean, I'm not sure what to say other than what you've just been saying, that it's very much a public act of legal acquisition, and that's being emphasized here. But maybe there's more to it. I don't know. But also the idea in the definition you read a few minutes ago about ma'ayan might
Mhm.
be actually related to the word ayin.
Yes, it is. It is.
Because
Because
you have
the eye is
opening.
yes,
An
that's right.
opening.
There could be an opening, but I think the way Jasper was going is that it's related to the word circle, that it has to do with the fact that a well very often is circular in shape.
Uh-huh.
But I like your suggestion of the idea of an opening as well. So yeah, I mean, I feel that the reason why it's le'ene is to make sure, because it's sort of like speak now or forever hold your peace. That if you see something taking place, you don't object to it. You realize how it's being done. And be'ozne, of course, also means in the hearing, right? So in other words, they were fully conscious of what was going on here. And that sort of lends itself very to interestingly about how transfer of property. So, for example, when a thief steals something, right, their intention is to do it without knowledge of the person who owns the property. The idea of lack of knowledge and how transfer taking place in public, in the clear presence, et cetera, is part of its permanence, as well as its, of course, its legality and consequent permanence. I mean, all these things that are sort of pulled together. Um, so I don't know if Osnay is repeated more than once. I don't sort of recollect offhand, but I do know Nene seems to be repeated a number of times. I wasn't making a special point, to take notice of it. All right, I'm happy to go on with the story at this point. So now, next chapter. The Abraham Zaken. Abraham had grown old. Um, what is interesting is Abraham, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Isaac was 30 years old when he married Rebekah, as I recollect. And Isaac and Jacob and Esau were born 10 years later. So if Abraham sired Isaac, Isaac was born in Abraham's 100th year.
Well,
So this,
I
yes,
thought Isaac was older than 30 at the Akedah.
no, I don't think so. I know there's some discussion of that, but based on that. Yeah, there's actually a very interesting, I don't know if it's Tosafot Yeshanim or something that discusses that and questions that particular chronology. I think like it wouldn't make, we look, I mean, it's stated explicitly in Toldot how old Isaac was when he got Rebecca. But the point is, Abraham died at 175, and so he would have been 130 at the time. So just a vigorous elderly guy. All right. Ba bayamim. Again, this sort of this parallel phrase here. He was coming of days. He literally. So he was zaken, and he also had gone through many days. Vashem, and the Lord Beirach et Avraham Bakol, blessed Abraham with everything. In every respect would be the way I would translate that. So I'm sure there are other interpretations of this parallel statement in the beginning of the statement, in the beginning of this verse, but at any rate, this is what Rashi has to say. Beirach et Avraham Bakol, he blessed Abraham in everything. Bechol, so the word Bechol, Ole begematria, adds up in gematria to the word Ben. So 2 plus 20 plus 30 is 52, and Ben is 2 plus 50, 52. Ume'achar shaya lo ben, so that once Abraham had a son, in other words, the way we're sort of using the gematria here is that because Abraham had been blessed with a son, okay, ume'achar shaya lo ben, and since he had now a son, hayat tzarich lahasio isha, Abraham had now the responsibility to get him married to a wife, to find a wife for him. So that's sort of a lovely, even though, gematrias are on the level of remez, that's the level of interpretation and their connection to the shot of the verse. They're allusions, hints. Nevertheless, in a way, understanding the word bakol in that sense shows this sentence as a direct introduction to what is going to follow. So there's there's also, of course, something very intriguing about the idea of had God not blessed Abraham with a son, Abraham would definitely have felt he was not blessed in everything. That having that son was everything to Abraham. Vayomer Avraham el Abdo. So Abraham said to his servant, Zakan Beito, the elder, in this case, we write the elder of his household, Hamoshel Bechol Asher Lo, who literally Moshe would be governed, right? So he supervised, right? Everything he possessed. This is his Eved. Simna Yadcha, please place your hand, Tachat Yerechi, beneath my thigh. Place your hand under my thigh. So Rashi's going to explain the significance of this. The point is that this was a way of making a formal oath. Zakan Beito, the elder of his house. Lefi Shehud Davuk, okay, so it doesn't say Zakein Beito, the punctuation of this. So what Rashi is saying is that this is in smichut. This is in the possessive case, right? The elder of. So he simply says hu davuk because it's attached to the following word. It's in smichut, nakud zakan. It is pointed with the word zakan. And Rashi doesn't go on to say any more other than to explain the way it's pointed. And so I'm not really sure beyond that what Rashi was trying to suggest in explaining it this way. Was it a necessary grammatical which Rashi definitely does many times, explanation. Tachat Yerechi, underneath my thigh. And this following is taken from the tractate Shvuot, which means oaths, page 38, it's a Talmudic tractate. Here we go. Lefi shahanishba, right? Because the one who is given the oath, right? The one who is going to be under the oath, Sarich has to take, Sheyitol Beyado has to take in his hands, Chefetz, an object, Shel Mitzvah, associated with a mitzvah. Rashi gives us explanations. Kagon Sefer Torah. So in other words, he takes a Sefer Torah, he holds a Sefer Torah when he's taking this oath, or tefillin, V'hamilah, and the circumcision, haita mitzvah rishona lo, and because his circumcision was the very first mitzvah, formal mitzvah given to Abraham, uva'alo al yedei tsa'ar, and it came with pain, right? He had to perform this. Pain accompanied the performance of this mitzvah. Va'ita chaviva alav, um, and it was precious to him, venatla, and he took it. Um, so this apparent verutzonolomar, what he wants to say, what he's trying to say is, ma shelo amar tachat yirechecha. He didn't say, the fact that Abraham didn't say to, so the implication here, by the way, is that we're not talking about Abraham here, we're talking about Eliezer. That,
So the elderly servant is Eliezer.
yeah, that's the understanding of it, yes. Because elsewhere Eliezer is known as his foreman, right? It's stated in connection with Eliezer. So
So let me ask you a question about the circumcision being his first mitzvah.
yes,
I thought that in the Adam and Eve story there was the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiplying.
correct.
Was
But
that only for Adam and Eve, or was that for everybody after Adam and Eve? And then wouldn't that have preceded the mitzvah of circumcision?
yes, it would have preceded. Everything you're saying is correct. However, Adam and Eve were not commanded to be circumcised.
Right.
Abraham
But-
was the one who received this particular mitzvah.
But wouldn't that be his second mitzvah then?
Well, only from a certain point of view, but if you're talking about his mitzvah, meaning personally given to him and no one else prior to him, then in that sense it would be his mitzvah.
Okay.
So so what this comment is saying is that Abraham didn't say tachat yirechecha. He didn't say underneath your thigh. V'hava le lahashpia ha'eved b'milato. And it would have been appropriate, right, for Abraham to make his servant swear by his milah, by his circumcision. Lefi, because Sheshel Abraham Haita Rishona. The reason why Abraham says to the servant, put your hand underneath my thigh, he says, because when it came to Abraham, Haita Rishono lo, it was first, he was the first one, I believe, to circumcise. Kodem Milat Ha'eved, prior to the servant being circumcised. And I think this is, so the kuf lamed is sort of interesting because it can mean the kal lahavin, and it's easy to see this. Sometimes it means the kasher lahavin, meaning this is a difficult thing to understand. But I think in this case, I think that he's trying to explain it in a straightforward kind of way. So again, maybe we're back now to saying that we're talking about Abraham when we're talking about why Abraham asked him to hold on to his milah. I know sounds very strange, but
I don't have that last part in my
I know
Sefaria.
that's in parentheses, yes. So whether or not it's the editor of this particular Rashi that put this in, or whether it's, it does sound like this is something put in subsequently. That this
So,
isn't necessarily it's not, this is not necessarily Rashi's words here.
so the yarech is a euphemism.
Correct. It is.
Yeah.
It's a euphemism. Correct. Lashon Sagina Hor. Language filled with light. And usually Sagina Hor itself is a euphemism for somebody who's blind. So,
But let me ask you, and I know it's 10 o'clock, but
yes.
isn't there a thing where when Jacob wrestles that part of his thigh is removed?
Yes.
Is
But
that a
then-
euphemism as well?
No, it is apparently not. That's an awfully good question because, based on what we read here, and that's sort of an interesting parallel, right? But the point is there, of course, we understand it as referring to the sciatic nerve because that's what's removed from the meat. So Lauren, I can't help feeling that there's some connection. First of all, that here toward, that there's a significant word used in Abraham's life with regards to a significant event, which seems to have maybe some parallels with what happens with Jacob and wrestling Esau. That I wonder if there are articles written about it, that there's some connections. I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to say farewell to our Facebook friends.
There was